Oh, okay, let's start. Um, Hanging out outdoors, which is not the best because soon the Songkran's going to start with the water festival, throwing wide, which will be death for computers and everything else electronic out in it. But right now, it's not this part of the area. Anyway, I had an idea here to cover something that have talked to some people in person about, and that is about the learning of languages, what is appropriate with translation, using translation, and what is not appropriate with translation. Okay, so I've talked about some right-brain ways and of learning, and they're good. I am not a proponent of either way, actually, right brain or left brain alone. The problem is that most people don't ever use right brain techniques or modalities, so they don't know them. They don't even know how to do it. They don't even know the research is out there. And actually, the right brain of Asher is the fastest, most documented method of learning, and there's nothing, nobody can approach it. So, okay, I don't want to hear your opinions. Cite evidence, which there isn't any, to refute that. Anyway, so what about translation? Now, you get a lot of people on the YouTube, of course, since they're autodidactic learners, which is not how language is created, not what language is for, and is actually antithetical to the entire idea of a language, which is communication with whom? With no one, because that's what you're doing. If you're doing it by yourself, you're doing nothing. Oh, I'm reading, I'm writing. Okay, that's the preserved aspects of the oral moment in the history of the language, which is fine, especially in certain aspects. Now, for example, Dr. Arguelles is a philologist, and that's what philologists do. They have a strong understanding of a language, especially from its literary roots. Philologists don't exist in non-scripted languages, actually, so nothing to be done there, right? Anyway, so I was looking at, I had some time, uh, amazingly, lately, and I looked at one of the Fluent in Czech guys' videos, and he was being berated on the fact of he was recommending translation, and he's correct. There is nothing wrong with translating. In fact, that's how Arguelles does his languages when he does them. Now, what most people are saying about translation, and they don't get it once again because they haven't been at the height of translation or interpretation. Now, interpretation is I'm going to get all this stuff, but I want to hit it briefly right now too. So, interpretation is the oral part. People say I need to translate. What they usually mean is I need an interpreter, because a translator is a person who works with the script, with the writing graphology of the language. Okay, so there are no translators in languages that don't have a script. There are people who initiate a script and then translate from another language into the new script that they make, and that's what some of the field linguists who are out there in the droves are doing because they have an agenda. Who would want to, you know, to get unscripted languages useful for them? Let's see. Anyway, so I won't go into that. It's a whole new topic. But interpreters are what most people say when they say, "I need." Oh, you're my translator. No, they mean you're my interpreter. Okay, interpretation is a higher skill because it's in real time. The uh, speaking is faster than writing and reading, because the writing is there for a longer time. You have a lot longer to decode the message than you do from the oral. Anyway, so okay, so what about the translation process? Now, a lot of people who berate the FSI materials and DLI materials because they haven't been there. They haven't gone to those schools, so they don't know. They're once again talking basically out of their ass. They might as well be talking about NASA because they haven't been there, but they're going to give their opinion on things. You don't have an opinion. You weren't there. You didn't go through it. You don't know. I used to talk with Don Castillo, Platiquemos. He's now dead, but he had gone through FSI, and we would compare notes between FSI and DLI and the methods employed and what were the end results. Now, same things were going on, and the fact was that you were using the language, you were doing things a lot. Uh, yeah, I got that allergy to some of the stuff in the air. Anyway, so you were having to do things. One of the things we had to do was every 8 seconds we would hear a line in the a sentence in a language, and we would have to translate that into English. Then the next sentence would happen every 8 seconds. They weren't repeated, and they didn't go back. So it forced you to try processing information quicker. So when the Fluent in Czech guy was saying you need to be able to do translation instantaneously, yes, that is correct, and that is what leads you to this high level where you can use a language. You can, if you can take your L1 and move it into the L2, almost instantaneously. I mean, we're talking microseconds of processing time. Then you have skill. But if you're talking about trying to work it out, taking 3 or 4 seconds, humming in, humming about, which most people do, you don't know the language, and you would never pass at FSI, DLI, and several other government schools that run at that level. Now, the reason like places like Middlebury do a contract where you can only speak the language that you're learning or that you're involved in is so that your processing goes up, which is the same thing that happens when you actually live in the country. So those people who never live in the country are never in those sorts of demands will never reach that level. So once again, people like Laoshi will never reach that level because he's not there. He doesn't have to do it. Okay, so the thing is that a lot of these people are talking about translation as if it's negative, yet they want to use translation in a certain way, but they don't really want to use it completely, which doesn't make any sense. They're not trying to meld the best because they don't want to push themselves, or they can't handle it to do it. For example, you had to get into DLI, FSI, you have to take the language tests to prove that you have an ability to handle it. Now, not everybody can do that. Different numbers mean you can handle different languages. And I've had a lot of people that have gone to DLI contact me from YouTube and from some of the things I've said, and I've also had real interpreters working for the EU Union and translators too, and UN translators that are talking to me. And I know I was at one of the now owned by Middlebury, but was the Monterey Institute, which is a UN interpreting school, the only one in the United States. That, I mean, their level's unbelievable. Unbelievable. But these people are all saying the same, agreeing with me on everything that I say. Well, it's funny how the higher level people agree with me, but the low level hackneyed version, I'm a linguophile dilettante, wannabe linguist, don't. Kind of, sorts things out. But anyway, so back to the point of translation. Now, translation is like a fight. Okay, why? Because I don't care if you want to say that you understand from passive, it's actually receptive. There's a difference. It's receptive ability. If your receptive ability is high and you understand what people are saying to you, that's good. You can follow along in a dialogue and this and that and the other thing. Now, what's the analogy with fighting? It's the same thing with like Laoshi wanting to act like he knows about Bruce Lee and JKD. He doesn't. He couldn't fight his way out of the bathroom. The thing is that looking at it or understanding a fight, becoming an aficionado or a pundit of boxing or MMA or K1 or Muay Thai even, any of those, doesn't mean you can fight. Why? Because you can't do it. You haven't done any production. So watching things or understanding things in a technological way, sort of like, oh yeah, well that's right, that makes sense why that's put together that way, or why you would follow that with this, doesn't mean that they can do it in real time. When the stress is on, the pressure's on in a real environment, whether it be self-defense, which is my main business, if you take a look around, which I've done for a long time, which I've changed the field in the mid-90s in the entire world, that or languages, they're the same. They're both performance. So if you have a passive understanding, that's good, but it doesn't mean anything without the ability to be active and produce. So you may know all these words when people say them to you. For example, let's use lexicon, but does it mean that suddenly you can create syntax? For example, parrots, they hear a lot of things. They don't understand them. They can repeat them, but they create new, unique words and phrases. That's the same thing going on with the fighting or with the languages. If you can't generate, which is where Chomsky comes in, if you can't generate anything, then you have no skill. Now, practicing generation, as in generating something, not as in generations as in genetic generations, generating things gives you a skill that is missed when you just try to do more of reactive stuff of reading and listening. Those are good because they improve your lexicon and improve your ability to process things that you hear. But to produce is totally a different skill set. Articulatory phonetics comes in at that point, and controlling yourself. That's once again going back to the prosody. That's also why, for example, Luca said in one of his things that he spends a lot of time on doing translation. Oh, well, gee, the guy with one of the best prosodies is saying he does a lot of time on actual speaking. Ooh, that would be a clue too, wouldn't it? Since all you people just, only thing you know about is YouTube, so clue into the YouTube and see who the best people are who are speaking. And I guarantee you that Richard is, the guy in the UK, is doing exactly the same thing too. He is translating. You don't have to translate at a certain level, but the best people in the world can instantaneously interpret, or they can write down. So they hear something in one language, they can write it in an L2 immediately. Or if they're told in a L1 or an L2, they can instantaneously say it with the pragmatic and semantic power that it meant in another language. So that's the highest level. And there's people who are saying like, yeah, ¿dónde están los servicios? Où sont les toilettes? Okay, stuff is too slow. The prosody, because their thinking is too slow. They need to be press, and practice. Now, I am not. What I'm doing here is trying to hit the global things. I'm not giving out personalized responses right now because, as I said, my business is about self-defense and that sort of things, and actually in languages and linguistics, but in academic setting where I teach at public-private schools and also one-on-one. But it's not here to be, I'm not trying to gain fame through YouTube for languages or anything. So I'm not doing that right now because a lot of people keep writing me, what about, I need to know about, I want to learn Czech. I want to learn, more about Nihongo. How about Thai? Can you give, no, people get paid for the research, okay? That's the part of being like academic. You get research assistants. Have you heard of that? People, get money for that. So I'm not doing the research for you, okay? I'm not handing over all my resources, okay? What I'm doing is cluing people into some bigger global issues. So, yeah, to recap, so translation that people are saying, or interpretation that people are saying is not important. It is very important. It's when your level is very high, when you can think not at the word level, but you're thinking at the phrase or clause level. You're instantaneously doing that. Now that's what happens when you go to FSI or DLI or a lot of other, there's some other schools that are just as difficult, where you're not thinking in word by word translation, you're thinking in phrasal or clausal level, and even at the paragraph level. You get to the point where you're starting to thinking in the paragraph level of what you're doing, and it's just boom, boom, boom. And if you don't have a boom, 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 you don't pass, you only get going, and no one considers you good at that thing. So you got to reset your standards here, because the standards have been lowered from the people on YouTube, because just the ones who have that level of skill, they just ignore you, because it's like linguists, they don't care, because they are too busy doing things like writing for grant money and doing actual research and validating data or comparing things or in the field or coming up with something that they've seen that works for computational linguistics, for example. They don't have time to waste here. I'm here because I want to kill the promulgated myths, innuendos, and faulty information that's going out from basically charlatans. But anyway, so I've covered a lot. So take away from that what you can. Once again, real name, real photo. Quit writing to me saying, oh, blah, 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 blah. Quit asking me to prove myself. Do the research yourself. If you've got something you think negates what I've said, then show me the citation, show the proof. I'm not interested in hackneyed opinions from people out there. If you've got credentials, okay, give it to me. If you're part of a Interpreters Guild, Translators Guild, if you've been through FSI, DLI, if you've got academic degrees, fine, then comment. But if you don't, who cares? Go prattle off to jet fighters about what you know about jet fighting, okay? So I'll see you later.